Business once again is always exciting to come your way every Wednesday with your favorite business development program on Radio Masterclass. Masterclass is powered by Joy Business and brought to us by Goyle. Goyle, they say good energy. Goyle, Yenara, Yendia. It's the 30th of October today. One more day to the end of the month. And then we move into the month of November with one more month to Christmas. Yay, Christmas is almost here. And our prayer, as is always here on the show, is that God definitely bless our homeland, Ghana, and make our nation great and strong. On this note, this is how we bring you Masterclass today and every Wednesday from 1:15 p.m. right all the way through to 2 p.m. here on your superstation Joy 99.7. My name, as always, is Yabanafo, and I am your host for the show. So last week and the week before last, we were spending time on the show talking about leadership. Leadership as it occurs in institutions, as it occurs in the home, as it occurs in every sphere and endeavor of life. And we always say that everything we talk about here on the show is so that it gives our entrepreneurs, it gives those of our business owners who listen in to the show an example of what has happened in other places so that they don't have to make all the mistakes themselves. We've been spending time in the studio with the CEO of a company called Busara Africa, which is a management consulting firm, and they've been teaching us about leadership here in the studio. Our resource person has been Taka Awori, and she's back in the studio with us. Taka, you're welcome back to the studio.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, indeed. I've got mixed feelings today. You notice there's a little drop in my energy level this afternoon because this is the last show we're going to have on leadership, and then we go into something else. But I'm hopeful that we're definitely going to bring you back in the studio sometime.
Wonderful.
Maybe next year. And then we can spend some more time talking about other things also.
Yes.
But I must say it's been exciting sharing content on leadership. We've looked at it in a completely different way. And I always say, whenever I've thought of leadership, I've thought of styles of leadership, forms of leadership, temperaments, orientation and all of that. But we looked at it in a completely different format. We looked at it in three ways. We looked at leading self, leading others, and then today we're going to be looking at leading the organization.
Yes.
It's been completely exciting. If you are listening to this show, this is Masterclass here on the Superstation. You want to send us a comment or a question, you can do that on 0244 340 437. You want to contribute to the discussion. You're probably in a leadership position, or you know someone who is, and you're doing it right, or you think you're not doing it right. You want to share your thoughts. You can do that on 0244 340 437. At some point in the show, we will definitely be opening the phone lines, and then you can also be a part of that discussion. Time check in the studio, 19 minutes past the hour of 1. We will be starting our discussion today. We'll probably start with a sort of recap on what we did last week. But before that, we'll take a musical break. This one is from Kwame Eugene, and it says Angela. Let's take a listen.
Anywhere you there, I go there. I said it, Coco, my one and only. Baby, car you want, I go hustle you. Baby, take my heart, baby, carry go. If you think I gon' leave you, God forbid, yeah. If you leave me, die, die, be this, yeah. You just show me things I can't resist, yeah, yeah. I go mention your name to the whole wide world. Baby, you would give me joy. It go better make us suffer so you don't cry. If we be having food today, I will go sky. Can it be true what they talk me? I know they lie you. Yeah. If you leave me today, girl, I don't die. If you think I gon' leave you, God forbid, yeah. If you leave me, die, be this, yeah. You just show me things I can't resist, yeah, yeah. I go mention your name to the whole wide world. Baby, you would give me joy, Angela.
That was Angela by Kwame Eugene, sharing some thoughts there. If you've just tuned in, this is Masterclass right here on your Superstation. We're spending time in the studio with Taka Awori, and we're talking about leadership. Taka, just before we do the recap for today's discussion, or for last week's discussion, if you like, and go to this week's discussion, I just want to open today's discussion with, and you promised us, by the way, that you're going to share some thoughts. Maybe sometime in the show, maybe it'll come up. But this is something that Alexander the Great said, which I shared last week, which I'm going to open the show with. It says, I am not afraid of an army of lions led by a sheep. I am afraid of an army of sheep led by a lion. I'll share the rest of some thoughts from some other great people before you start your presentation today. But just by way of recap, last week we spent some time talking about leading others. Would you just like to do a quick recap for us, for those of our listeners who missed out on the show last week? We talked about leading others.
Yes.
And that's going to be a premise for our discussion today, leading the organization. So quick recap. Maybe we can take it all the way back to leading self.
Yes.
And then leading
yes,
others.
Yes.
Just a quick
yes.
recap, if you like. Yes.
So we started with leading self, where I said that you can't lead another until you lead yourself. Because leadership really is walking the talk, being an example for others to follow. And that becomes the foundation for your leadership. So that was the first one, leading others. Now, last week when we focused on leading others, so the first one, was leading self. The second one was leading others. And I focused on three things using the metaphor of the bus. So the first thing was about getting the right people on the bus, so doing your recruitment effectively. The second thing was ensuring that the right people stay on the bus. And that's all about retention, keeping your good people in place, keeping them engaged and performing. And the final one was, it's recognizing that either sometimes you have people who are not a right fit or match and they need to leave, or sometimes people for their own personal reasons need to leave. So that's what I call getting people off the bus, and those are what I call healthy separations. So that was last week, leading self.
Right. Just to quickly add, when we talked about leading self, you did go ahead to mention some of the 5 key points which people should consider. And I'm just sharing them again so that if you're listening today, you missed the show 2 weeks ago, you can also make some notes for yourself. That you cannot lead yourself if you do not ask yourself these questions, or you do not take note of these 5 points. And essentially, they were knowing your why and your what.
Yes.
Okay, so you're leading yourself. Why do you
Yes.
do what you do?
Yes.
And what is it that you're doing anyway?
Yes.
You should have a plan, because
Yes.
obviously if you're going to do something, you can't just... I think we've heard enough literature about failing to plan, meaning that you are planning to fail.
Yes.
So
yes.
either way, you're planning for something,
Yes.
whether or not you are deliberate about it. So do
Yes.
have a plan, by all means, do have a plan.
Yes.
And then we talked about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. You know, somehow as humans, I don't know if... I don't want to say that's how we're made, but we're akin, or we easily move to the path of least resistance. And so we don't want to push ourselves, but we're saying that if you're going to be a leader, you must stand out.
Yes.
There must be something about you. And Taka, you did mention that a leader is one that people follow because they want to. A manager is one that people follow because they have
to. Yes.
You know, so
Yes.
if you want people to follow you because they want to, you must stand out.
Yes.
You must distinguish yourself. And that sometimes means getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. It just means pushing yourself.
Yes.
And then the next one you talked about was developing and investing in yourself. Obviously, you have to invest in yourself. What does that mean? Read. Find out knowledge, information. Knowledge is power. Information is power. Today, data, we say, is more valuable than gold, because the data can give you a lot more gold. You know, gold is given to you for something you've done or something you're going to do. It's definite.
Yes.
It's valued for the service you're
Yes.
going to give. But if you
Yes.
have information, there's no telling what
Yes.
value that brings
The
you.
knowledge economy, yeah.
I mean, and if you have good information or good data, it helps your skills of negotiation, and you can get a lot more.
Yes.
You know, so, and the last thing you talked about was embracing failure, because having done all these things, you know how the Bible says, having done all that the situation requires, stand. Because sometimes,
Yes.
even when you've done everything right,
There will be valleys. Things won't work out as planned.
there are those variables you do not control. It's called failure. Sometimes
Yes.
it happens. But when it does, just stand, you know, learn from it and then become better.
Nice,
Right.
nice.
I'm just going to go to a few more quotations that we've shared in earlier times, and then we'll let you go straight to our discussion today. And then at some point, we'll open the phone lines. So, again, we're looking at people who have spoken about leadership. And Steve Jobs, co-founder of Apple, has this to say. He says that innovation distinguishes between a leader and a follower. Innovation distinguishes between a leader and a follower. When we talked about innovation, I think a year or two ago, we spent time with Kofi Dadzi, Rankart Solutions, and he said that, look, innovation is not necessarily IT-based. Innovation is doing things differently from how others are doing it. So as a leader, you probably need to be innovative about the way you do things. How differently can I do the same thing that other people are doing? And it's the innovation that brings the attention. And then people can begin to buy whatever you're producing. John Quincy Adams, statesman, diplomat, lawyer, also says, if your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, then you are a leader. So today, ask yourself that question. Are my actions inspiring other people to dream more? Are they inspiring other people to learn more? Are they inspiring other people to want to do more for themselves and become more? Indeed, if it is, then indeed you are a leader. I think I'll share one last one and then I'll let Taka take it away. John Maxwell, speaker, pastor, and author, says, a leader is one who knows the way, who goes the way, and who shows the way.
Powerful.
A leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. So let me introduce your discussion today by asking the question. I think one of our callers last week asked that same question. What's the difference between a manager and a leader? I know you've already started by saying a leader is one that people follow because they want to, and a manager is one they follow because they have to. But if you want to elaborate on it quite a bit more, what's the difference between a leader? Can a leader be a manager? Is a manager a leader? Well, you can turn it upside down. Let's see. Yeah.
Okay. If you remember, there was also something I said to that particular caller. I said, I often say that leadership is about bringing out the best in people. You lead people and you manage things. And so often when I meet people who are in leadership positions, I say to them, you need leadership skills and management skills. And you'll find that some people are better at one of the two. There's some people who are really great at bringing out the best in another, but in terms of management, they're all over the place. And I would say to them, at least you need to have the basics or have somebody as part of your team who's really good at managing the resources, the assets, the finance. So both are often needed in some of the leadership positions that we'll see. But often I find leadership is about people and management is often about things. I've also heard it say, and I also subscribe to this, that often leadership is about transformation. It's about doing things differently. It's about change. And today I'll be talking a little bit more about change. And whereas often management is about maintaining the status quo. And there are moments when it is key to maintain the status quo, but other times it's all about shifting and doing things differently, and that requires leadership.
So let me just slip this one in very quickly, having given us that context. What should a business owner do? Should they aspire to be a leader or to be a manager?
You should aspire to be a leader. You should
Right.
aspire to be a leader, but ensure that you have management skills. And I think this is going to come up particularly in our session today in terms of what it takes to lead an organization, and you do need management.
Right, great thoughts there. I'm sure that when we open the phone lines, most of our listeners will give us a call or send us a message, and we'll get interactive because they do want to be a part of this discussion. What we're going to do today is that once we're done talking about leading the organization, if there's enough time, we're probably going to go up and down the entire discussion we've had for the 3 weeks, and then we'll just sort of try and round it up nicely so that we leave our listeners with something tangible for this discussion on leadership. So today we're talking about leading the organization. And the assumption here is that you're a business owner, you're an entrepreneur, you do have an existing organization. Otherwise, on the second and third levels, you work in an organization and you're a leader of some group or some department or some team or whatever. And so clearly this is information that will help you do exactly what it is you're doing. So let's talk about leading the organization. Haven't talked about leading self, leading others. Now we're talking about leading the organization.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
so let's
jump into it. Huh?
Let's take this discussion away.
Let me start with two quotes, since I did make a promise to you. The first quote is from Nelson Mandela.
Wow, super.
And he says, it always seems impossible until it's done.
I like that.
Always seems impossible until it's done. And many times when you're creating a business or an organization, initially you'll think it's utterly impossible until it gets done and people will say, wow, how did you do that? The second quote to launch us is maybe something I have said before, which is, the test of leadership is what happens when you leave. What's your legacy? What do you leave behind? And when you're at the top of an organization or of your business or your company, you're the founder, you're the CEO, or you're aspiring, that's something you have to constantly be thinking. I'm not going to be here forever. So what am I leaving behind? And what I would like to share with your listeners today is three key things to keep in mind, three keys to leading the organization, the business effectively, so that what you leave behind, your legacy, is something powerful and sustainable in the long term. So the first thing is about creating the right organization or corporate culture. And I think you've already had a number of master classes on culture, so I won't say too much about it, but I will name a couple of things that I think any business owner or leader, organizational leader, needs to keep in mind to ensure you have the right culture. The first thing is ensuring that your culture is modeled after your values and is the right culture to help you deliver your business results. So you need to look in the mirror right now. And when I say culture, I simply mean your ways of doing things in your company. So look in the mirror and say, which ways of doing things enable us to achieve our business results, respond to our customers, and which ways don't? Number two, recruit. Back to this recruitment, getting the right people on the bus. Recruit in alignment with those values and the culture you're trying to deliver. Is it going to be a match when you see a new aspirant coming into your company? Develop capacity. So because sometimes getting the right culture, let's say you want a performance-oriented culture and you currently don't have that. Let's say you want a more innovative culture and you don't have that. It might mean building capacity around that. It's also about holding people accountable. You may start to identify key behaviors you want to see staff displaying that are in line with the new culture or the culture you want to see. But unless you hold people accountable on that, it'll just be like, yeah, but they don't actually do it. And finally, and this is the big one, and back to leading self, leaders have to walk the talk. Leaders and what leadership does is a key aspect of how you create and model the culture that you want to see. So that's the first thing. That's one of your key roles. If you're at the top of an organization, you are responsible for ensuring that you have the right organization or corporate culture to deliver your business results. The second is around change. And again, it's recognizing that when you're on the top of an organization, you will constantly be thinking about change because change is the new norm. Now, what I would say is that rather than being the one who's constantly reacting, responding to change, the best leaders of companies are ones who are getting ahead of change. They're the disruptors. They're the ones who are changing the context, the environment. Then everybody else has to catch up. They're the ones who are actually seeing around corners and saying, these are the trends that are coming up. So let's change the sector to better respond to that. Driving change, influencing change. So once a change is in place, then you need to communicate effectively. What does that mean? You need to be clear about what needs to change. You have to be communicating consistently. And there has to be an urgency in why people need to change. You need to enable participation. If you would like people to change, they need to be part of deciding, thinking through what that change looks like. Otherwise, the top-down approach to change usually is not very effective. Align leadership to build trust and embrace resistance. Let me say a little bit about this embracing resistance. I think many of us have been parts of processes where initially we try and drive a change. We're saying, okay, this is how we'll do things differently. And we find that there are those one or two people who are immediately on the sidelines saying why everything can't work out well, the naysayers. We all know them. And usually as leaders, our initial response to them, and usually because they might have a pattern, we go, oh, there they go again with their negativity, their toxic behavior. Whereas what we're learning in the world of change and influencing change is that effective leaders actually embrace the resistors because they have valuable information for you. Number one, they may be showing you that you're too ambiguous about what change needs to happen. So through their resistance, through their negativity, they might actually be indicating to you that you need to get more clear about the change. They may be indicating through their resistance that you need to re-strategize. Your whole approach to change is not effective. Or they may be indicating to you that your approach to change is not realistic. So actually, their resistance provides you with valuable data on how to strengthen how you're approaching the change process. So I would say embrace resistance, don't push it away when you're leading or driving change. The third area is around sustaining growth. So of course you've taken off and you're doing well, but as we see, and this is a key challenge in many African companies, how do we ensure that the growth and success lives beyond you, the founder? And it's starting to do a couple of things. One, you think long term. Look at how the Chinese think. They think 100-year strategies. It's starting to think beyond your tenure while you're there. It's building an institution in terms of systems, processes, so it's not all about you as the top leader, the person at the top. It's not about you as the managers, but people know that you've actually built an institution. And I think one of the key things we're missing in Africa in terms of leadership is we're missing strong institutions that are able to hold those in power accountable. So it always becomes about personalized powers. So I think a key task for those of us in leadership positions is to build strong institutions that can live beyond us, which also means as a leader at the top of your company, you need to invest in succession and transition. You're starting to think through, where is the pipeline? Where are the emerging leaders coming? Who are the group of people who would replace me when I step away? Am I leaving a number of options? Am I developing their competency so that if I do leave, there isn't a huge gap? The other thing about sustaining growth is your key thing is around your customers, if you're a business, or if you're an organization, it's about your constituencies and how you constantly respond to their needs. Because they're the ones who are going to be saying, you know what, we want to keep this company in business. We want to ensure this organization responds. So this responsiveness to your customers or your constituencies is also a key aspect of sustaining your growth. And finally, it's investing in your brand. It's a brand that stands beyond you as an individual, so that if you leave, it's something that can continue into perpetuity. So those are the three I would say that one needs to keep in mind. Number one, create the right culture. Number two, drive or lead change. And number three, sustain growth.
Right. Very straight to the point. I like the way you go straight to the point and just present them, easy to remember. So let me just quickly go over what you've talked about, just in case someone has tuned in. This is Masterclass on your Superstation Joy 99.7. We're spending time in the studio with Taka Awori. We're talking about leadership. Today we're focusing on leading the organization. So essentially three things. To be able to lead the organization, these are the things that you should look at. Number one, you should create the right culture. And in creating the right culture, we're saying that these are the pointers. You can do that by looking in the mirror, man in the mirror. You should name your values. You should recruit carefully. You should develop capacity. And then you should hold people accountable as well as walk the talk. In driving change, we're saying that to be able to drive change, number one, you must seek to be the initiator rather than the recipient of change, which means you must lead from the front and not from the back. You must communicate effectively. You must enable participation. You must align leadership to build trust. And then you must embrace resistance. And you spend some time to explain what that means. Then the third thing is sustaining the growth. So you achieve the growth and then you sustain it. And again, you can do that, number one, by thinking long term. Number two, by building
An institution
which has processes in place. And number three, investing in succession and transition. I think that's a very key point, succession planning. And number four, continually remain responsive to your customers, which means take feedback and work on it. And the last one is investing in your brand. We'll be taking a quick break, but before we do that, just share some few thoughts, not into too much detail because we'll come back to it. Succession planning. Now we're going to talk to Ghana. We're going to talk to businesses in Ghana. Do you think that Ghanaian businesses, from what you've seen and how long you've been in Ghana for, do you think that succession planning is something that we take seriously?
No, not at all.
What are we doing wrong?
I think the businesses are too centered around founders and the personalities of founders.
Okay, so hold that thought because I'm going to come back to that. Time check in the studio, 40 minutes past the hour. We'll be opening the phone lines shortly. And then when we do, we'd like you to get interactive. We're talking about leadership right here in the studio. We take a very quick break. And when we come back, we continue with our discussion on leadership and get interactive. Stick and stay.
The masterclass is in session, and you can interact with us via Facebook at Joy Business or at Joy 99.7 FM. And if you tweet, the handle is at Joy 997 FM. Don't forget to hashtag masterclass. You can also send us a text on 1422 across all networks, or join the WhatsApp conversation on 0244 340437, and our facilitators will address your concerns. Attention everyone, class is in progress.
Right, you're welcome back. This is Masterclass here on your Superstation. So do you own any vehicle of any kind? If you do, here's some good news for you. Goil's new Super Synthetic 5W20 and 5W30 loops are the best engine oils for your vehicle. They are specially engineered engine oils which efficiently work on all your modern petrol and diesel engines. They clean, they protect, they reduce fuel consumption, they prolong oil change intervals, and they enhance your vehicle performance right from when you start up till when you switch off. So go to any Goil filling station today and grab the new Goil Super Synthetic 5W20 and 5W30 engine oils for superior vehicle performance. Goil, they say good energy. Goil, Genara, Gendia. So we're talking about succession planning. You know, a lot of businesses today are built around the owners. And this is brilliant. I mean, there are huge examples around us today. But what we're saying to Ghanaian businesses is that if you want to become like the Apples, the Tescos, the Nikes, all of the big, companies all around us, then succession planning needs to be looked at. So you were going to say, you're going to share some thoughts with us. Let's go straight to that. And then let me open the phone lines first, and then you can react to that. Numbers to call 0302 216 541. That's 0302 216 541. The phone lines are now open. You can pick up that phone, get interactive, give us a call. We're talking about leading the organization, and you can go back to our earlier conversations on leading self and leading others also. If you're in a leadership position, you have some thoughts to share with us, pick up that phone, give us a call on 0302 216 541, or send us a comment on 0244 340 437. Taka.
Okay.
Yeah.
We were talking about succession planning, and I think for succession planning to be effective, it can't happen in a vacuum. It needs to happen in a context where all the other things in place we talked about.
Right.
So, for instance, when you have the right organizational culture, one that enables different leaders to emerge, one where it's clear that the style of leadership in this company or organization is inclusive leadership, one in which every voice matters, you're much more likely to have a pipeline of leaders who are constantly ready to step up in order to your succession plan to work effectively. So it's not just about having the plan in place where I say, okay, these are the 3 or 4 people who I think could replace me. These are their competencies. It's also the environment in which they're operating that makes a difference.
Right, I've got Alawi from Accra. Let's talk to Alawi, then we go to social media. Good afternoon, Alawi. You're welcome to Masterclass.
Yes, yeah, good afternoon, and good afternoon to Taka.
Hello, Alawi.
Yes, I think you're doing a fantastic job.
Thank you.
And you made very interesting and profound statements, which I totally agree with you. One has to do with the problem of Africa, where we don't have strong institutions, but we have strong men. And the danger of this is that a lot of business owners will die with their own ideas because they fail to put in place structures and systems, at least to ensure the continuity of that. And that then dovetails into the issue of succession planning, okay? Now, having said this, at the very beginning of your discussion, you made a categorical statement that leadership is about change and then transformation. So then I wanted to find out, assuming an organization is in crisis, and then you are appointed from somewhere, okay, to lead this, would you lead by transformation, or you want to fix the situation before you go into the transformation or change phase of that? And finally, because of time, I think that the issue, y'all talk about the issue between the leaders and managers. And I see the difference in terms of the modus operandi of achieving results. Managers would want to use hierarchy, span of control, unity of command to exact obedience in terms of achieving results. Leaders would want to inspire, motivate, appeal to the conscience of their followers, irrespective of existing hierarchies, so that they will do the work voluntarily, okay, even beyond their will. Okay, but above all, I think you're doing very well. And I want you to hammer more on the succession planning, please.
Thank
because
you
it's
so
affecting
much.
Ghanaian business.
Thank you
Okay.
so much,
Yes.
Alawi.
And
Thank you
yeah,
so
please
much.
get in touch. I called you several times. You never answered. Please.
I'll call you.
Yes.
I promise.
I would want to discuss with, put me and my attacker on one of the platforms.
I
please.
will.
Okay.
I will. I
All
promise
right,
I
take
will.
care,
Thank
take
you.
care, take care.
That was Alawi. Let's take
Yes.
note of his points.
Yes, I've taken
we've
note.
written them down.
Yes.
I've got Omosumuru from Doma. Let's talk to him. Good afternoon, Omosumuru. Thank you for calling Masterclass.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for the video.
Yes, talk to me.
We were talking about manager and the leader.
Yes, please.
Yeah, what I have to say. To me, a manager is someone. So, a manager is someone who is able to,
If you can just speak up a bit for me, your line is quite faint.
can you hear me?
Yes, it's much better now.
I said a manager is someone who plans to do something and getting the thing done.
Okay.
Yes, that is a manager. And a leader is someone who leads people to good destination.
Okay.
You know what? In Africa, we believe in trust rather than principle. That is why most businesses don't go order. Is it when you open a business, people use their family, their friends, their colleagues to manage their businesses for them, in putting their trust in them. But is it in business or whether financial, we use principle and not trust. So I want to tell each and everyone who is listening to this program that when you open business, don't say, I know this one. Oh, sorry, I know this person. This person is my friend. This is my colleague. This person has been recommended to me. Therefore, this is the person who can do the work. Get the right principle and use it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. Okay, so he's made a point about managers and he shared his thoughts right there. But let's go back to Alawi's points. I think Alawi asked a question about succession planning, and then I think he had a follow-up question. Let's address his concerns and then we'll come to social media very quickly.
Thanks, Alawi. On your second point in terms of the difference between managers and leaders, fantastic. I think I couldn't have said it better. On your specific question about when there is a crisis, do you come in and do transformation or you stabilize? Leadership is so situational. You really, and I think some of the best leaders I have seen have been people who are able to read a situation and then determine what is the best way to actually address it. So I don't think it's an either or. But one thing I would say in terms of helping one determine, do I transform or do I stabilize, is what would enable you to take people along with you? A key thing, particularly if you have come in to turn around a company, many times people come in and they have all the great ideas and they're like, we're going to do this differently. And they rush to transform and they're 500 miles ahead. They look behind and there's nobody there. So the key thing is you may need to stabilize things. Take your time. Remember when I talked about change? Ensure that there's participation. Ensure that you're really listening. Ensure that you've understood people's concerns. Ensure that you've understood what's important to people so that when you're making the case for the transformation and where you need to go, you're bringing them along with them. When there's resistance, you're taking time to understand what it's all about so that people can be part of the transformation.
Super, super. I've got Adimang Joseph from Committee 9 in Tema. He says, good afternoon, Masterclass. My question is, when we talk about leadership, is it necessary to gain a higher degree than whoever you're working with or who is managing for you? He's asking whether, as an owner of your business or as a leader, you should necessarily have higher academic qualifications than whoever is managing your company for you.
Let me even just say one thing that I really want to leave your listeners with, a key leadership philosophy that I think as Africans we need to adopt. You don't need a title to be a leader. So if I walk into a company, the ones who are the managers, supervisors, CEO, vice president aren't necessarily the leaders. Even they might have leadership roles, but they may not be exercising leaders. So Joseph, the first thing is, it's not about your degrees. It's your ability to lead yourself, others, and influence others towards a shared goal. Now, in terms of whether you need a certain degree above your boss, that will depend on the job description and what's required. But it's key to understand that you don't need a position of leadership or a title to influence others or to exercise leadership. Start with where you are.
Start with where you are. Right. Interesting. 51 minutes past the hour of 1. This is Masterclass here on your Superstation. The phone lines are open, 0302216-541. Give us a call. We're talking about leadership here in the studio with Taka Awori. Taka, you talked about strong leaders versus strong institutions. I'm going to go back to that point because we want Ghana to become better for it. So in 30 seconds, speak to my listeners who are entrepreneurs, who are business owners, who most probably have always thought that, look, if I team up with someone else and do this, they're going to rip me off, and I'm not going to get the support. All of that concern, and I almost moved from the man talked about trust and all of that. People have concerns, genuine concerns. Okay, I think Alawi is back on our line. Let's talk to him, and then we will continue. Good afternoon, Alawi. Thank you for calling back. Please go ahead.
Yes, just to add to Taka's point about whether you need titles and accolades, okay? Just remind Joseph to look at the CVs of people like Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, and interestingly, all of these were college dropouts, but that didn't stop them from becoming leaders of the world, so
Indeed.
please. And again, Taka is doing a fantastic job. Tell her I would love to meet with her.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you,
Alawi.
Okay, so I'm buttressing your point there. I've got Francis from Achimota. Francis said, good afternoon. Great program. The issue of succession planning is very important. How do we get help in this area? That's his first question. And then it says, finally, trust is as essential to business as a principle is. So he's also reacting to the first concern from the second caller about the fact that we value trust over principles. And his point is that trust is as essential as principles are. But his question is, how do we get help in the area of succession planning?
Okay, so this was Francis. Francis, please get in touch with us. You can find us at our website, busara-africa.com, but we're also on social media. You can follow me on Twitter, but also we have a Facebook page. Please get in touch with us, and we can see how we can give you some specific support on succession planning. Yeah?
Super.
Trust. Trust is so key. And, I can empathize about these issues. I run my own business myself. And it's also a thing I've thought a lot about is what's the legacy I'm leaving? It can't always be about Taka. How do I ensure that I'm partnering with...
Post-Taka.
Post-Taka, when Texit happens, what happens to Busara Africa? So I truly empathize with business owners that struggle with these issues. I think as one of the callers said, number one, it's what is your brand? When your brand is about excellence, then you're ensuring that when you're recruiting people, people know, and this thing about leadership, sometimes you have to stand alone. Sometimes you have to say no to the relatives who will assume that you will give them a job simply because they're your relative, because you recognize that your brand is about excellence. Your brand is about professionalism. When you're clear on your values and your brand, then you're in a much better place to say no to the wrong kinds of people who want to run the business differently. In the issue of trust, it's so interesting. I would always say, first, become someone trustworthy. When you're someone who's trustworthy, then it's also much easier for you to select the right kinds of people to partner with.
So you must be trustworthy yourself to be able to attract that kind of trust from the people that you work with. Walk the talk, essentially.
Walk the talk.
Right. Now, you were going to speak directly for about 10 seconds to business owners in Ghana about strong leaders versus strong institutions.
Yes, indeed. It's interesting. Strong leaders build strong institutions. Weak leaders need it to be all about them and their egos, and therefore find it quite difficult to leave strong institutions. So I'd always say, as a strong leader in building the kinds of institutions that Africa needs, the question to keep asking yourself is, what is my legacy? What am I leaving behind? And what type of institution am I leaving behind? It has to be about beyond me. It has to be about the systems, the processes, and particularly the people you have transformed who are better versions of themselves as they have worked towards delivering the business results.
But Taka, surely, putting this into context, strong, or let's say very well-built companies at some point have to first be built. They've got to get to that point where they make the difference. Then the question of beyond me begins to come in. So I'm asking the question, putting this into context, at what point do great leaders who have built great companies, great establishments, great institutions, at what point do they begin to think about post-me, succession? Is this part of the deliberate activity from the beginning?
From the beginning.
From the beginning.
From the beginning.
Right.
I'm already thinking, Busara is a young, vibrant company, but I'm already thinking of Texit, because your business model has to be structured around the idea that when you go to scale, when you become an Apple, it's no longer just about you. And even when it's still your name, everybody knows John Maxwell. But it's still, as much as you all know John Maxwell, you know that John Maxwell has an entire team, a structure, a process that is there to deliver results even when he is not there. But that has to be intentional. So even as you're working in the business, you have to be working on the business to ensure that you have the kinds of systems, processes, branding, policies, particularly value-driven culture that enables whoever comes in to know that, in this place, this is the way we do things around here, into perpetuity.
Talking about branding, what would you say about businesses that build brands around leaders? And I'm asking that in the context of succession, in the context of continuity. So will I emphasize that my brand should be less of me and more of the institution or otherwise? Because there's some very strong brands which are built around individuals.
Yes.
And you find that if and when they have to leave, there's a crisis.
Yes. So I think you've answered the question. When they leave, there is a crisis. However, again, things like Anthony Robbins, very strong company built around his values, yet I suspect when he leaves, they will sustain. So it's, can your business still deliver the results that the brand professes to deliver even when you're not there?
Wow, very deep questions. I don't want to be the one to say it, but if you're listening, words to the wise. Okay, so Taka, we've talked about leading self, leading others, leading the organization. There's so much information that has been shared about how we can do this right. At the end of the day, we want to take something away. What's the takeout from the discussion over the last 3 weeks, and how can we become different? What's the one thing you'll say if we forget everything else, the one thing that we should take away?
In our African context, it comes back to the self. You can't lead another until you lead yourself. You lead from within. What we see on the outside, your leadership style, whether you're inclusive, whether you're participatory, starts with you within, your values, your ability to lead your values. We're often seeing this crisis of trust in leaders. It's not because they are not brilliant. It's not because they don't know what to do. They simply haven't invested in doing the inner work to lead in alignment with your values. So start with self. Look in the mirror. Be the man, woman in the mirror.
Start with yourself. Be the change that you want to see.
Oh, that's even a better way. Be the change that you want to see. Be the leader you would want to follow.
Wow. Be the leader you want to. That's a good one. Wow. I wish we had more time with you here on the show. Unfortunately, this brings to the end our discussion on leadership.
Thank you so much.
Maybe we'll have you back sometime next year.
Great.
We've had a wonderful time. Next week, we continue in another area of discussion. We'll be looking at the principles of corporate governance here on Masterclass. By all means, do make a day. This has been Leadership with Taka Awori. My name is Yabanafo. Up next is the news at 2 o'clock. Thank you so much.
Thank you, this was great.
See you all next time. Same time next week. Right,
Thanks.
cheers.
Bye.